All right, welcome back to trigonometry. We are going to be figuring out the z to the fifth power if z were equal to negative 0.9 minus 1.09i. I do not want you guys to go ahead and do this. Don't do this and FOIL this thing out. I want you to use De Morgan's law, or I'm sorry, De Moivre's law, which will be provided. Okay, the formula for this will be provided for you, and do it that way. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to figure out, we want the polar form of this complex number. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to say we need the absolute value of this number, and then we're going to say we need cosine of theta plus I sine of theta, and we're going to go ahead and graph it and get the polar form of this thing. Okay, so the first thing to do, let's go ahead and start to graph it. We have negative 0.9 I. This is the real line and the imaginary line. We'll say imaginary. So we have negative zero point 0.9, which is almost zero point 0.1, and negative 1.09, which is a little bit more than 1. So we're going to be over here somewhere, okay? So we're going to be looking at this point right here, and we have to figure out what's going on here. We need the absolute value. The absolute value is only the distance between 0 and that point. That works for real numbers. It works for complex numbers. Your book may call it the modulus of the number. We're going to call it the absolute value, but we just want the absolute value of this number right here. It's a triangle. Okay, so we're going to say we need the hypotenuse of this triangle. So we're going to say the absolute value of z is equal to the square root of negative zero point 0.9 squared plus 1.09 squared. Now, the I just gives me a direction. You don't need to include that into your calculation for absolute value here. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and figure out what's going on with this. The negatives are going to be positive because we're going to square them. So all we're going to do is we're going to say we need zero point 0.9, let's see, squared. Where's my squared? Plus 1.09 squared. Okay, and then equals, and we got 1.998. If I take my square root of this piece here, it should be close to 2. So we have the square root. So the absolute value of z, I'm going to round it and say that it's the square root of 2. We're going to say this is going to be 1.4135. 1.4135. We'll hold that off to the side here. Okay. All right. Next thing we have to do is we have to figure out the angle. All right. So we have the adjacent side, we have the opposite side. How do we get the angle? So we need which trigonometric form will relate the opposite, the adjacent, and the angle. Well, that's tangent. So we're going to say the tangent of theta is equal to my opposite side is negative 1.09. Negative 1.09. I misdrew this. It should be down here. Okay, we want it in the third quadrant. Divided by negative zero point 0.9. Well, it's negative over negative. That'll be positive. Okay, so this will be go ahead and make that positive. So I want theta equals to the inverse tangent of 1.09 divided by zero point 0.9. Now, this is going to give me a angle in quadrant 1. I don't want it in quadrant 1. I want it in quadrant number 3. So whatever we get for this, we're going to add 180 degrees to it so that we can be in quadrant 3 here. Okay, so we're going to say inverse tangent. There we go. And we have 1.09. There we go. Divided by zero point 0.9. And we'll go ahead and say, and that is 50.454 degrees. So we have 50.454. I didn't do that on purpose at all. I wish I did. All right. So that's my degrees, right? So that's what we're doing. It's not quite done yet. We have to add 180 to that because that's the actual angle. I'm sorry, 180 equals. So we got 230.454. So we have 230.454. This is my original theta. All right. Now, I want to go ahead and figure out. I've got my z in polar form here. Okay, it's 1.4135 times cosine of 230.454 degrees plus I sine of 230.454 degrees. If I multiplied all of this stuff out, I should come back to negative 0.9 minus 1.09i. Okay, so we could do that. But now I have to go ahead and take this to the fifth power. In order to take this to the fifth power, we're going to say z to the fifth is equal to 1.4135 raised to the fifth power times the cosine of 5 times 230.454 plus I sine of 5 times 230.454. These are in parentheses. You know what? I'm going to do myself a little bit of a favor. First, I'm going to take that 230.454. I'm going to multiply it by 5 right off the bat because that's what we have to do with this thing. So it turned out to be 1,152. 1,152 point. Let's go ahead and see what this is. 26. Let's call it 27. Okay, because this 5 will make this 9 into the next 0. That'll raise this over to the next one up. So it'll be 0.27. Okay, so we'll say 0.27 degrees. All right. Now let's go ahead and calculate this thing out. So we have z to the fifth is equal to 1.4135 raised to the fifth power times cosine of 1,152.27 degrees plus I sine of 1,152.27 degrees. And we're going to go ahead and run this through the calculator and get some answers with this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and say we have 1.4135 raised to the fifth power. Okay, so we got 5 point, let's see, 5.6. What are we going to? We're going to, okay, we'll do three decimal places. 5.643, 5.643, okay, 5.643. And we're going to say that's going to be times the cosine, and we're going to write this down as a number. So 1152.27. All right, and we'll go ahead and sort that out. So that's 0.3045. So 0.3045 plus, and then we're going to figure out the sine, right? 3045. So now we're going to do the sine of 1152.27. Right? That's my value that we're going to stick with. And say plus, and this is going to be 0.953. So 0.953. We got 4 decimal places. We did 95. We'll say 9525. Go ahead and do it that way. Okay. 9525. I. Okay. The last thing we have to do is just distribute this to the next little piece here so we can put it in the proper form. And that's pretty much how we're going to do this. We have 5.643 times, not divide, but times, and we have 0.3045 equals, and that's 1. Where do we want this to? We said the 3 decimal places to 2 decimal places. What are we on? I'm not sure what we said. We'll say the 3 decimal places for this. So we have 1.7. Let's see what the last decimal places are. 1.718. 718 plus, and then we'll go ahead and figure this out. So this will be we'll say, well, we'll do 5 point, where is it? 5.643 times, and we'll say 0.9525, right? Equals. And I ended up with 5.375, 5.375. That would be my answer for this z value, this complex number raised to the fifth power. Right, and that's the answer I'm going to put down and say that's what I'm going to go with. I'm happy with that, and we can go ahead and submit that as an answer and say we're done. Okay, I'm going to say thank you very much for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one, and take care.